Some people have complained about my comments on David Walliams, saying that I'm inconsistent. The Nazi salute, which David Walliams is allegedly supposed to have performed um, in a Christmas special of Would I Lie to You, which was being recorded last week. The comedian and the author who was once celebrated for creating Little Britain, has reportedly performed not one but two Nazi salutes during filming, apparently in jest. And the reaction was swift and sharp, gasps from the audience, followed by a spate of outraged headlines and editorials. And rightly so. Because the Nazi salute is not a blank gesture waiting to be coloured in by our intentions. It's already soaked in blood. It's the visual shorthand of genocide, of fascism, of the industrialization of human cruelty, and it cannot be mimed innocently. The real question is, can it be mimed at all? Where can it be mimed? And the importance of context. Comedy has long wrestled with the symbols of authoritarianism. And in fact, some of the greatest satire of the 20th century has dared to mimic, to mock, to manhandle fascist imagery, but always with razor sharp intention. Consider, for example, Basil Fawlty goose-stepping around Torquay in Fawlty Towers. Don't mention the war. Cleese is not celebrating Hitler. He's skewering British awkwardness, residual jingoism, and post-war absurdities. And incidentally, I don't think, unless I remember wrongly, that he actually performs a Nazi salute. But in The Producers, which is much more interesting in a way, in The Producers, Mel Brooks infamously stages Springtime for Hitler. And this is a grotesque parody of a great musical number. And in that process, he the Nazi salute becomes a form of choreography and is in itself ridiculed. And I think I think that's that's a very interesting a very interesting moment in screen and theatrical history. Springtime for Hitler is a grotesquely cheerful musical number that lampoons the Führer with Broadway jazz hands and rhinestone swastikas. In Doctor Strangelove, Stanley Kubrick casts Strangelove as a lunatic ex-Nazi whose mechanical arm keeps snapping into a Hitler salute, mocking the post-war recruitment of Nazi scientists into Western power structures. Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise in their Angela Rippon sketch flirt with the line, but never cross it. The audience understands that the joke is on the ridiculousness of the gesture, not its ideology. Even Doctor Who, which gave us the Daleks, whose stiff single-arm protrusion and screech of "exterminate" was not accidental. The Dalek is in fact a fascist in a dustbin, pure ideology in robotic form, and in its own way, satirical. Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator in 1940 doesn't merely parody Hitler, he dissects him. The salute is there, but it's contorted, exaggerated, and infantilized. And Chaplin, who was often accused of being too soft on politics, delivers a final speech that is still quoted today as a cry for peace and humanity in the face of totalitarianism. Each of these examples has one thing in common: the salute is deployed not for shock, but for satire. And crucially, the audience is invited to laugh at fascism, never with it. The problem with Walliams and with Elon Musk, who both performed this gesture, they performed it not in a theatrical satire, but as part of a sketch about themselves. It wasn't part of a performance on fascist absurdity, but during a recording, in the case of Walliams, of a light entertainment panel show. There was no context, no commentary, no target of ridicule. In the case of Elon Musk, he was celebrating the victory of Donald Trump. Just that gesture out of the blue. And in the case of both of them, twice. And Musk, who who posted this photograph of himself gleefully with the exaggerated salute. Again, no satire, no commentary, no redeeming context, just the giddy thrill of provocation. And the difference is profound. Satire punches up. It mocks power. It punctures pomposity. It exposes the ludicrous heart of tyranny. William's gesture doesn't do that. It's not a criticism of fascism. It's a lazy throwaway gag. And in that laziness lies the result. It's the very absence of context that makes it offensive. When you deploy that gesture without a clear object of ridicule, it is stripped of commentary. You risk normalizing it. Worse, you risk trivializing it, and the Holocaust becomes a punchline. The Nuremberg rallies becomes a backdrop for a studio chuckle, and history, real, traumatic, unresolved history, is reduced to a mime, a sideshow. We have to be careful, therefore, not to confuse outrage with censorship or historical sensitivity with humorlessness. Nobody's banning the use of Nazi salutes in drama or in satire. When the producers is performed in Germany, it's complete with its Nazi salutes. And we are right to ask, why is the Nazi salute being used? What is being said with it? Who benefits from its repetition? And William's defenders will say he was just being silly, but there are some things too serious to be just silly about, to be just anything. A salute like that without criticism, without commentary, is not silly, it's stupid and dangerous. And the role of comedy, real comedy, is not to shrug at the horrors of history, but to confront them, to reshape them, and if possible, ridicule them into impotence. That takes courage, it takes intelligence, it takes intent. A glib, meaningless Nazi salute on a primetime game show doesn't do any of that. It's not satire, it's not even funny, it's a gesture looking for a meaning. It's a gesture which says that Williams is more important than history. I remember being at the NTV award ceremony, and Williams descended from the gods on a wire, looking like some sort of messiah. Williams is up himself, quite frankly, and for no reason. I don't see why there is such reverence for Williams. I think Little Britain is a spectacular piece of work. His writings less so, but this cascade of primetime television appearances, I don't think he does himself very many favours. And as for the gesture itself, it mocks the very people who've spent a lifetime ensuring that the memory of fascism is not forgotten, and the horrors of that gesture are not forgotten. And as ever, in comedy as in history, context is everything.